Since then, that chief judge that you mentioned, Judge Boasberg, has written, and I'm quoting him here, Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 6E allows witnesses like Patel to divulge the contents of their testimony, meaning that nothing was preventing him from doing so before the committee.
A sitting FBI director told this committee there was a court order standing in his way. The judge he named just said, on paper, that there wasn't one. 9 months ago, in this same room, Kash Patel gave the Senate a reason he couldn't answer for himself. Today, that reason came back, in the judge's own words, read into the record by the man across the table from him. So the question isn't whether Kash Patel had an excuse. The question is why he needed one that wasn't true. On one side, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, a former U.S. attorney who spent his career building cases, not headlines. On the other, the man running the FBI, sitting behind a nameplate that says, Honorable Kash Patel, about to find out that some things are actually on the record. This isn't the first time these two men have been in this exact position. Whitehouse sat across from Patel at his confirmation hearing when the enemies list question first came up and when the court order excuse first got made. Back then, it was one senator's word against a nominee's explanation. Today, it's different, because today, Whitehouse isn't relying on his own memory of what was said. He brought the paper, and paper doesn't forget what people hope you will.
When you were here for your confirmation, we talked about your so-called enemies list. It appears to me that there have been adverse actions of various kinds taken against about 20 of the 60 people on your enemies list. You've been in office for 7 months. At that rate, you've got 14 months until you've hit all 60. Can you explain that?
Do the math with him. 60 names, 20 already hit, 7 months in the chair. Whitehouse isn't accusing, he's just counting out loud. And counting is harder to deny than an accusation. Notice the tone here, too. Whitehouse doesn't open with outrage, he opens with arithmetic, the kind of simple, boring math that's almost impossible to spin. 20 out of 60 divided by 7 months, projected out to 14 more. That's not rhetoric. That's a rate of change laid out like a case file before Kash Patel has said a single word in his own defense.
Again, that is an entirely inaccurate presupposition. I do not have an enemies list. You can continue to characterize it as you wish. The only actions we take, generally speaking, for personnel at the FBI are ones based on merit and qualification and your ability to uphold your constitutional duty. You fall short, you don't work there anymore.
No list. That's the flat denial. But nobody in that room disputed the number 20. Nobody disputed 60. The director just called the math a presupposition and moved past it. Watch what he does next when the subject changes to something he can't wave off with a sentence.
Well, there was a list. You don't like it to be called an enemies list, and it had about 60 names, and about 20 have had an adverse action. So those are, I think, pretty clear facts. Let me move on to your grand jury testimony, which we also talked about when you were here. I think you indicated that you understood that a witness in the grand jury is free to discuss afterwards whatever they told the grand jury. And you then went on to suggest, saying, I can't go into court orders granted by the D.C. District Chief Judge, and you want me to violate a court order. In those remarks, you fairly plainly suggested that there was a court order of some kind that somehow restricted or limited your ability to discuss your own testimony to that grand jury. Since then, that chief judge that you mentioned, Judge Boasberg, has written, and I'm quoting him here, Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 6E allows witnesses like Patel to divulge the contents of their testimony, meaning that nothing was preventing him from doing so before the committee. Can we confirm here today that there is no court order of any kind that limits your ability as a witness before the grand jury to discuss your own testimony to that grand jury?
Read that back slowly, because this is the moment the title promised you. Kash Patel didn't just decline to answer a question last time. According to the record Whitehouse just read into the transcript, he pointed to a court order that, in the judge's own words, never stopped him from talking at all. Not a gag order, not a seal, nothing. So here's the open loop this video is going to close. If there was never a real order stopping him, what was he actually protecting by staying quiet?
We can confirm that pursuant to my action, that grand jury testimony has been released, the transcript.
Let's, in what forum was it released, may I ask?
Publicly.
One word. That's the entire defense against a direct contradiction from a sitting federal judge. Not an explanation, not a correction, just publicly, and a promise to check it later. Notice he never once says the earlier statement was wrong. He just says the transcript is out now. That's not an answer. That's a door quietly closing on a question nobody asked him to close. And here's why that matters more than one awkward exchange. A grand jury transcript being released is good. Nobody's arguing against transparency after the fact. But the reason this hearing exists at all is that Kash Patel apparently didn't need a court order to stay quiet the first time. He just said he had one. Whitehouse isn't trying to relitigate ancient history here. He's establishing a pattern in real time, on camera, so that the next excuse Kash Patel gives this committee gets measured against this one.
Okay, we'll check on that. The FBI does background investigations. In the case of a U.S. attorney, Janine Pirro, it has come to light that in a civil proceeding, that Fox News executives, prior to her confirmation, called her, I'm quoting here, a reckless maniac who makes, quote, insane comments, and said, I don't trust her to be responsible, and noted her penchant for what they called random conspiracy theories on weird internet sites. My question to you is, did that turn up in her background investigation?
Second gear. This isn't about a list anymore. This is about whether the FBI's own vetting process caught warning signs about a sitting U.S. attorney, in her own former colleague's words, and whether that information ever made it past Kash Patel's desk. 3 doors. It either wasn't found, it was found and buried, or it was found, reported, and the White House moved ahead anyway. Watch which door he picks.
For any background investigation, Senator, we do not discuss those publicly. And for every background investigation, when there's an adjudication, it is not made by me. It is made by the career professionals who run the inspection division and background check system.
He didn't pick a door. He said the door doesn't exist for public conversation. That's a real policy. Background checks are confidential. But watch how Whitehouse uses that same confidentiality against him in the next 30 seconds.
Do you know if that information was found? You see, we're an oversight body here, and there are really 3 possibilities here. One is that the FBI background investigation didn't find that stuff. That's worth noting because these investigations, full field background investigations, are supposed to find that stuff. That's possibility 1. Possibility 2 is that the FBI did in fact find that information and then did not report it to the administration or to the committee. And the third is that you found it, you reported it to the administration, and they went ahead with her nomination, knowing that she had been described as a reckless maniac who made insane comments, who wasn't trusted by colleagues to be responsible, and who had a penchant for random conspiracy theories on weird internet sites. Are you saying that this committee does not have any authority or reason to look into which of those things is true?
That's the central question of this entire hearing, said out loud in plain English. Incompetence, concealment, or knowing approval. Pick one, Director. Those are the only three doors that exist. And notice what makes this line of questioning so hard to dodge. Whitehouse isn't asking Patel to confirm the reckless maniac quote itself. He's asking a narrower question that's much harder to slip past. Did the FBI's own process, the one Patel is supposed to be accountable for, ever surface it? There's no fourth option where the quote simply doesn't matter. Here's how he answers a three-way multiple-choice question.
This committee can look into anything it wishes. I'm telling you that the background investigations that are done by the HRD division are done by career individuals. They do not report the details of those to me. They adjudicate those independently and individually. That's how it's always been done.
None of the three. He picked door number 4. The process answers for itself, so he doesn't have to. Whitehouse lets that sit for exactly one beat, then pivots to something Patel can't hide behind a career staff process at all. A decision made by name the week Patel walked in the door.
What happened during the pause of FBI background investigations that was alleged in the complaint against you and the FBI by the FBI agents who were terminated? On February 12th, Emil Bovee directed the FBI, quote, to pause any FBI background investigations of Trump nominees until Patel was confirmed, which happened on February 20th, is the general description of what they alleged. Why, do you know, were background investigations paused? Was it so material like this could be scrubbed out of them? And have they been resumed without that pause fully and normally after your arrival on February 20th?
An 8-day pause on the exact background checks they were just discussing, ordered to end the moment Kash Patel took office. Whitehouse isn't asking him to explain someone else's decision anymore. He's asking him to explain a decision timed to his own arrival.
I can speak to the time period since I got there. Background investigations have been ongoing across the board at the FBI.
Why was the pause, do you know?
I was not there.
Wasn't explained to you when you got there? Oh, by the way, boss, they've had an 8-day pause on background investigations. You think that would be something that would be explained to you at some point?
Again, I leave it to the men and women at the HRD division to run background investigations. I do not interfere with them.
I get that. But what I don't get is whether you were told about that pause, and why would you not be told about that pause?
I don't recall that, sir.
I was not there. I don't recall. 4 answers, 4 different ways of saying the same thing. I don't know what happened inside my own building the week I became its director. That's not confidentiality anymore. That's a director telling Congress, under oath, that he cannot account for a decision made in his name. Think about what a background investigation is actually for. It's not paperwork. It's the FBI checking whether the people about to hold federal power have anything in their past that should stop them. Conflicts, character issues, red flags that the public and the Senate deserve to know about before a vote, not after. That's the entire point of the process Patel says he doesn't personally touch. And for 8 straight days, while he was waiting to be confirmed, that exact process was reportedly switched off for nominees loyal to the same administration that was about to make him director. He doesn't have to have ordered that pause to be accountable for explaining it. He runs the building it happened in.
All right. The allegation also relates that part of the employee review of senior staff was whether or not they voted for Kamala Harris in the 2024 election. Since when is who you voted for a proper question for agents to be asked?
Not background checks on nominees anymore. Internal reviews of FBI staff, reportedly touching on who they voted for. If true, that's not vetting. That's a loyalty test inside the FBI under this director's watch. And this is where the enemies list from the cold open and this question stop being two separate stories. If a review process inside the Bureau is quietly logging how agents voted and adverse actions are landing on a list of 60 names at a rate of 20 in 7 months, those two facts don't have to be proven connected for the question to be fair. Is the FBI promoting and firing people based on loyalty, not merit? Exactly the accusation Patel denied at the very top of this hearing.
I don't know what allegation you're referring to, Senator. If it's from an ongoing matter in litigation, I can't discuss that. But what I can discuss is I can only speak to the FBI's background investigations. There are other background investigations conducted across the government. I can only speak to mine.
So just to clarify, I'm not talking about the FBI full field background investigations. I'm talking about internal employee reviews for promotion, for termination, for job actions of various kinds. And my question to you is it now the policy of the FBI to ask agents who they voted for, and since when is who agents voted for a proper question for the FBI to ask?
Taking those in reverse order, it's not a proper question, and it's improper to allege that I'm doing that. And also, at the FBI specifically, under my leadership, we do not ask who you voted for. And just one correction for the record, if I may, Senator, it's Security Division that runs background investigations, not HRD.
Read what just happened underneath the denial. For the entire hearing, Kash Patel told this committee that vetting decisions belong to HRD, the career staff, out of his hands, not his responsibility. In his very last sentence, under a direct question about loyalty tests, he corrects himself. It was never HRD. It's Security Division. The director spent 9 minutes pointing to the wrong department to explain why he isn't responsible for what happens inside his own agency. And he only got the name right by accident, at the very end, while denying something else entirely. Sit with that for a second. Every single time Whitehouse asked who was responsible for the pause, for the Pirro review, for the process itself, Patel's answer was some version of, "Not me, it's the career staff." That answer only works if he actually knows which career staff he's talking about. He didn't. He named the wrong division for 9 straight minutes and only corrected it the moment it became convenient, buried inside a denial about something else. That's not a small clerical slip. That's the director of the FBI demonstrating, live, that he doesn't know the basic org chart of the process he's been using as his shield the entire hearing.
Okay, I'll accept that correction. And in the event that we cannot locate your grand jury transcript, just expect a question for the record that will give you the chance to either provide that transcript again if it had been previously provided, or to make the statement that Grand Jury Rule 6E allows you, to the best of your recollection, truthfully, about what it is that you told that grand jury. Do you understand that?
That's why I wanted the transcript released, and we'll get it to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
So here's the loop closed. In plain terms, there was no court order. The judge who supposedly issued it says so in writing. There was a pause on background checks, time to Patel's own confirmation that he says he can't explain. There was a background check controversy around a sitting U.S. attorney that he refused to rule in or out of 3 plain possibilities. And there was a question about political loyalty tests that he denied so quickly he got his own agency's org chart wrong doing it. None of that required Whitehouse to raise his voice once. He didn't call Kash Patel a liar. He just kept reading the record back to him, one line at a time, until the record did it for him. That's not a viral clip. That's a transcript that doesn't go away, the kind that gets pulled back out the next time Kash Patel sits in that chair. Before he ran the FBI, Kash Patel spent years telling the public that transparency was the whole point, that the system had been hiding things for too long, and that he was the one who'd finally open it up. Today, in this room, the record shows something different. Not a scandal with a smoking gun, something quieter, and in some ways harder to shake. A director who, 3 separate times, in 3 separate ways, couldn't account for what was happening inside the agency he runs. A man who once said transparency was the whole point of the job just spent 9 minutes explaining why he couldn't be transparent about a court order that, on paper, never existed. The transcript is public now. The record is permanent. What would you have asked him next?